No Peg Wrong Hole Productions presents Ravings with Tana and Bill.
I'm Tana.
And I'm Bill. How are y'all doing out there in internet listener land?
It's a fine place.
It is. It's the world of information at your fingertips. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about some issues that are popping up all around. They've been talked about a lot in the past few decades and hitting a lot of news stories lately. Drug enforcement. It's a horrible, horrible thing.
Well, there's
Not really.
there's the war on drugs and need for treatment and all these different things that are popping up in the news. And we are going to be talking about some drug enforcement oops.
Yeah, some of the mishaps that take place. A lot of the people are trying to push through legislation to just do away with all of the drug laws.
Yeah, and so what's productive and what would be counterproductive?
Right. So what's going to cost us more in the long run? What's going to save us as a society, possibly? Who knows? We could start off with explaining at different points in our life, both of us have used cannabis. I always prefer the name cannabis because marijuana was sort of made up when they began the whole drug war. What the hell does that mean? Isn't it like crazy plant or something in Spanish?
I'm not sure, but yeah, I prefer the term multa, the Spanish pronunciation of multa. Yeah, so that way no one knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, but unfortunately, even though I enjoyed my time using, I had to stop because there are many different factors in the world. You've got to hold on to a job and not fail a drug test. I don't want to end up living inside of a cage.
Right.
One of the worst things, I don't want to put up with drug dealers because they tend to be pricks.
Well, and now for younger people, a lot of schools are requiring drug testing for students that are not only athletes, but just the regular student body population.
Yeah.
And that's something being pushed forward in several of the school corporations locally for us, is they're trying to drug test students to help find treatment for them, though the students will be suspended and expelled and put into JDC, Juvenile Detention Center, if they're found to be positive. So I don't know how much treatment is actually involved with that.
Well, that's not treatment at all.
No, it's not, clearly.
That's basically throwing a thou shalt not upon the subject, instead of really treating the root cause of the problem in the first place, which most people just want some form of escape.
Right, entertainment.
Entertainment, some kind of escape. Some people use it for a spiritual medium. Some people use it with the proper reverence, and they're not a danger to anyone. Yeah. But some assholes will fuck it up for everybody.
Exactly. And that's with everything in life. There's always going to be a few bad apples that ruin the whole cart.
Yeah, I can completely understand. If we're going to get to the point like Colorado did, just straight out saying it's legal, no more problems with you carrying around cannabis. You still have to have some rules in place. I mean, you're going to have some form of age restriction on the sale.
Right. Yeah. It's not going to fly having 3 or 4 year olds go into a dispensary and make some purchases.
Exactly.
People will be so upset.
I got a note from my mom.
She said it's fine.
I should hit the chronic.
We're looking for chronic crunch.
It helps with teething problems.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I mean, I know there are a lot of people out there who argue against it and say, oh, I'm fine to drive when I'm under the influence. I'm fine to do this. I'm fine to do that. And really, no, you're not. You're just fucking stoned and you think you're fine to deal with it.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, absolutely. I would be incredibly concerned if, for instance, a surgeon were high as a kite, had just smoked a big old fatty, and came in to start hacking on me. I would not enjoy that at all.
What do you mean? I thought we finished that procedure.
Right. But if that same surgeon went home that evening and smoked a little before he went to bed, he's not going to be impaired the next day. He's not.
Right. I mean, we should still keep up with our public intox problems. I mean, our laws.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be able to drive a vehicle. You should be over a certain age to get to it. We should devise some sort of breathalyzer test so you can tell if somebody's under the influence right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if it's still in their lungs, they're high as a fucking kite.
Right, because it stays in your body for longer than what you are actually impaired by it from.
Well, yeah, it does. But there's got to be some form of test that can be devised on telling whether or not somebody's had it within a certain time frame.
Right.
Say within 4 to 5 hours, which that if you've ever had anything good, that's about how long it'll last. That's why people want it, because it lasts a lot longer than alcohol.
Right.
And there's no morning after sickness, no hangover. It was always a wonderful thing, and goddamn, I miss it.
Right, but yeah, all these years without it kind of puts a damper on you, even maybe your ability to remember how awesome it was.
Sometimes. I remember. I learned, through a lot of meditation, I've learned to reach the same state of mind for short periods of time, just through breathing techniques. which is nice. I mean, it can still put you in that introspective mode, but it's not making food taste better.
Right.
It's not making stupid TV shows any more entertaining. It's something you do just for your own spiritual growth. The way some people actually use the plant in the first place.
Right, and we could sit and talk all day about what movies were funnier or what TV shows, seem to make more sense or less sense, or what your favorite food was that you'd go and run and get in the middle of the night. But that's really not what the conversation today is about. It's more people who use responsibly.
Right, and there are a lot of people who do responsible use.
Right.
Not enough, because too many of you assholes are loud and obnoxious when you're not responsible with it.
Oh, good Lord, I tell you. But yeah, there's a whole faction of people out there that are using this drug, and they are functioning at a completely fine level. They have jobs, they have families, they have bank accounts with money in them. They're not out robbing people or anything. And that's not the kind of drug that anyone would even do that for. And
well, people do though. I mean, when you look at like violence in the drug trade, a lot of it does revolve around cannabis, but only because of the black market value of it in the first place.
Well, and that's true though, because I have known of people who were dispensing it to other persons, and then other people would know that they had such a substance and would go and take it from them.
Yes.
Sometimes aggressively. Sometimes rather aggressively.
Well, anytime you're dealing in an illegal trade, you're going to do whatever the hell you need to keep your game going.
Right. And that's the thing, is it's a moneymaker, and if it weren't a black market issue, then there wouldn't be these secret underground organizations and whatnot that are, and I don't mean like the mafia or anything like that. I mean like, groups of friends that get together and sell things to each other. There wouldn't be a need to hide things.
Right.
In parking lots behind the building and out behind the willow tree and that sort of thing.
But how much better would the world be if the people who were interested in the responsible use of the substance could just go to a gas station or a tobacco shop or a dispensary somewhere, show ID that they're old enough to purchase it, and then go home and use all they wanted.
In the privacy of their home.
Yeah, without fear of somebody kicking in the door and sending them off to live in a cage.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that there's many, many people, and we have some stats here about how many people do use marijuana recreationally. And obviously, not all these millions of people are out causing problems. So There's a whole separate faction of people that have a different issue. And that seems to be what it's blamed on, but that's not actually what it is.
See, I think these stats we picked up were a little bit on the low side, because I've heard much higher ones in the past.
I have too.
But, shit, I forgot what website we pulled those off of, and I didn't write it down. Now we're screwed. You're going to have to do your own research, people.
No, we've got a couple of the websites listed here on our board.
Not the one for the actual statistics here said that more than 800,000 people arrested each year for the use of cannabis. Possession, production, dealing, all of the above. 800,000 people is the average.
Right.
52% of all of it, or I'm sorry, 52% of all the arrests are based on drug violations.
Right.
Which is a little bit ridiculous, especially when 88% of those 52% are only for holding on to it, having it in their possession.
Right.
It's not dealing or anything.
And that can be as small as having a roach.
Right.
So you have now faced prison time because you had literally $1.50 worth of marijuana on you.
Or you've got a pipe on you that was once used for it because you went to somebody's house and you smoked, and now you're taking your pipe home.
Right.
It still tests positive, you're going to jail. And that's just ridiculous.
I've actually known people who got a pipe from someone else. They had, been a former smoker, and they gave this pipe to somebody, and they literally used it for tobacco. And then it tested positive for marijuana, though, because it had been used months previously for that by another person.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah.
There ought to be a way to tell the difference in the testing. And if you're going to ruin people's lives and lock them up, cause them to lose their jobs, you need a means of being damn positive
that there's actually even drugs
that's
there.
What's being done with this pipe, or anything. I mean, we've seen a lot of cases. We were looking at the false positives for the drug tests,
mm-hmm.
and they claim a lot of the issues have been fixed, but there were a lot of things that you could take on a day-to-day basis that are over-the-counter that would cause you to fail a drug test and possibly lose your job.
Yeah, my favorite was the Vicks inhaler, like Vicks as in cough medicine.
What was it? What did it make you test positive for?
It made you test positive for cannabinoids.
Oh, I thought the Vicks was like methamphetamines. Or
Oh
some
no,
shit.
you're right. I'm
Okay.
thinking of the other medication we had discussed.
Oh.
Yeah, the nasty of the ibuprofen,
Yeah.
which caused you to test positive
That
for
horrible
marijuana.
narcotic ibuprofen that some people take.
How dare you have some joint pain and need to take some ibuprofen or even a headache? Oh no.
That is aberrant behavior, and you must be locked up.
Right, but we've heard now that has been fixed where you no longer test positive for taking ibuprofen. But what about all the people who had been arrested or didn't get jobs prior to that?
Yeah, they lost their livelihood and had their lives turned upside down because some asshole in a lab didn't do his job right.
Mm-hmm.
Or just took a guess at what the substance should test for.
Right. But yeah, we've been doing a little bit of research on drug testing, and apparently the same drug tests that the law enforcement use for field tests are the same ones that we can buy online. And it says on the websites for online that they are fallible. So why is it that you're using something to then allow someone to raid someone's home when you know that these tests are fallible? And they could have sent something to a lab and had more concrete evidence, but they didn't.
Well, it's fine. They're available to the public. If you look them up online, you could buy them for like $20.
Yeah, they range from $20 to $50 depending.
Yeah. Anything that mass produced is going to have flaws occasionally.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that needs to be addressed in all court cases involving anything to do with drug testing.
Yeah.
You don't even have probable cause if you get a false positive on one of those tests, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
If it can be tricked that easily, it's a useless piece of information, and you're just wasting the time of the police officers.
Well, and are there really that many circumstances where they need an instant, right now, is this a drug or not, where they can't go and find out for certain in a lab?
Exactly. I mean, I can understand there are times when you pull somebody over and they've got warrants or whatnot, and they need to be taken in right away.
Right, and
If
warrants are a
it's-
totally separate issue.
Yeah, it's a completely separate issue. But if you just suspect that somebody might be under the influence, or you suspect that this might be a drug substance that they have, get their information so you know where to find them later, and then send it off and test it. If
Right.
they run away, they're going to be on the run forever, man. This is the age of the internet. There's nowhere to fucking hide anymore.
Right. Well, and if someone does run, then you will know that they probably did something wrong.
Right.
But you can't just hold someone indefinitely while waiting for these lab results. That's not American. Oh wait, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Guantanamo said what?
The definition has changed so much in the past decade, it's hard to say what's American anymore.
By American, I meant Canadian.
Yeah.
It's not Canadian. It's not okay here.
It's not the South American way anymore.
Exactly. But yeah, it's insane, really. But yeah, so ibuprofen can cause a false positive. Naproxen, which is sold sometimes under the name brand Aleve, can also cause false positives. Yeah, I don't even understand this whole thing. This whole thing is just...
Well, the problem is the whole beginning of cannabis discrimination and making it unlawful, it all started with William Randolph Hearst, who was a big newspaper mogul. And at about the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, there were people who had figured out a machine called the decorticator, which could take hemp and break it apart into fibers very easily, which has always been a really difficult job in the past. And then you could create paper out of the hemp.
Right.
Hemp, of course, you can plant 1 acre, and it's like harvesting 5 acres of trees.
Correct.
And you could grow multiple cycles in 1 year. You can completely replace the use of trees for paper. And it's a more sturdy, long-lasting paper. Anytime you find a book from the ancient world, or even the Declaration of Independence, the only reason it's lasted is because it's printed on hemp.
Right.
And hemp has had like a huge influence on all of civilization. If you don't know that, you need to go do some homework. But he wanted to fight back and make sure that his logging industry wasn't going to be destroyed. So he started printing stories in the newspapers, which were horribly racist in the first
I was going to
place.
say that.
Take a bunch of white people and show them their fear of the brown folk.
Yeah, but yeah, I was actually going to say that because it was not only the African American community that they were targeting, it was also the Asian American community.
Yeah.
Because they just always want to pick
Those
groups of
evil
people.
opium dens.
Yeah, the evil opium dens, and yeah, the opium dens apparently then became marijuana dens because the Asian population that we had in our country at the time and the African population that we had in our country at the time are what caused all of the propaganda. They decided to target that group of people, those two groups of people specifically, and that was the propaganda.
Yeah. You only have to go back like 50 years prior to William Randolph Hearst starting this whole bunch of bullshit where he invented the word marijuana, which is why I use the word cannabis, because marijuana is a made-up substance. I don't even know the proper definition of marijuana, but it has nothing to do with that plant you're being prosecuted for. That's just a misnomer. But if you go back like 50, 60 years prior to that, you can read like the diary of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And he says one of his favorite things in the world is to sit on his porch in his rocking chair, smoking a pipe full of hemp and watching the sunset.
That does sound nice.
That's who we consider our greatest president, folks.
And he was a pothead.
Yeah, and he was a pothead, just like all the ones before him, and a few after, and probably,
well, some of them.
Yeah, I'll say even some in the 20th century that admitted to it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they didn't inhale.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm smart enough to get in the circle and stupid enough to waste someone else's weed.
Exactly. Step back, sir. If you're not going to inhale that, what's wrong with you? That was 15 cents worth.
I can balance a budget and get blowjobs from fat interns, but I'm not going to inhale your weed. I'm just going to burn it down and waste it so you don't get a good high.
Exactly. We'd hate for you to be a little more fair with that distribution.
Now, that just cracks me up. I mean, if Clinton or Bush Jr. or Barack Obama, if any of them had ever been busted for the drug use that they claim happened in their younger years, their lives would have been ruined. They would have never made it into political office.
They wouldn't have made it into university.
Exactly.
Truly.
They would have gotten kicked out of schools because it was a lot more difficult to get into a college then.
Yeah.
Whereas all you've got to do now is own a pencil and know how to write your name.
And apply for student loans.
Oh, yeah, definitely apply for
You can only get in when you have all those student loans. They like that.
Freedom.
That is freedom. I'm so free.
I'm so free out the ass.
Exactly. I love it. But yeah, so... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, the top 3 drugs being used in the country are alcohol and tobacco. They run neck and neck for number 1. And then weed. Yeah. Weed is number 3.
Right.
And it's the only one of the 2, or the 3. Wow, I cannot count. Jesus, that past use is killing me.
But yeah, those 2 are much more deadly than cannabis is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of deaths per year each.
Well, because there's alcohol-related car accidents, there's alcohol poisoning, then there's the long-term alcohol effects. Destruction of the liver and the pancreas and different things like that. Then with tobacco use, it's the same kind of thing, long-term use. But with marijuana, there's much less chance of any kind of health issues. And the European Medical Journal released a statement stating something to the effect that they would like it to be deregulated because it doesn't really it doesn't cause any harm to the body.
Well, and that's why it's a Schedule 1 drug, though, because they claim that it causes harm and has no medicinal benefits.
Except for all these people out there using it medicinally, would argue.
Even though foreign universities have been discovering over and over and over again for 50 years that it has a lot of medicinal benefits, and that's how our medical marijuana laws in some states are getting passed, is based on that research and the research of private institutions.
Right.
But even though we know now, yes, it does kill cancer. Yes, the hemp seed is the most nutritional thing you can eat.
Yeah, I would like to preface a little bit of that by saying that marijuana smoking, the actual smoking of the marijuana, is not in a high enough. That does not cause a high enough level of chemicals in your body to treat cancer. That's when it has to be consumed in usually pill form.
Yeah, pill form. Eating it. The smoking is not that good because
it causes irritants. Yeah. It's an irritant to your lungs.
It's kind of weird because inhaling the burning plant matter is harming you, but at the same time, the chemicals in the plant are trying to heal you. So you're kind of negating what you're doing. You need some other means of putting it in the body. I've heard a lot of people advocate, the edibles are the way to go. But I always worry about who's making the edibles and what chemicals are they using to get those. I don't know. I'm not so interested.
No, and I'm not either, but it's just an interesting conversation point. That if you need it in a higher dose to actually treat these various illnesses, it has to be something taken internally, not actually smoked. So you would have to either take it in a pill form or as an edible. And I completely understand that, because if I were going to buy, say, edible butter that has THC in it, I'm going to want to know what circumstances and what conditions this cannabinoid plant was grown. I need to know, was weird chemicals put on it while it was growing so that it would produce more product at the end? I need to know that sort of thing.
Is this a Monsanto plant? Do I need to be afraid of this?
Monsanto weed.
Well, and that very thing, and not wanting to deal with drug dealers, is the reason a lot of people went to growing indoors in their own homes.
Right.
And right now, we've got shitloads of people who are having SWAT raids on their home because the police assume they're growing drugs.
Right. And
What they're really doing is trying to do what's called aquaponics or hydroponics and grow food indoors.
How dare you grow some broccoli and Brussels sprouts in your home, right in your living room for the world to see.
If you go on Nidorama.com, there is a beautiful story. The police raiding the wrong house 41 times.
And
That's a 4 with a 1 following it.
Yeah, 41. And that 41st time was only about a week and a half after the police had promised this family they would stop raiding their home.
We'll get it right and get the house down the street next time, I swear.
Yeah, the other home that they were supposed to have been raiding all these many times was only about 100 yards away, and they just kept storming into the wrong house to the tune of 41 different times. Not once, not even twice. And that was only over an 18-month period. 41 times. I mean, that's almost every day. I know that's not really, but
well, no,
dang.
It's not an everyday thing, but when you see the number 41 attached to a story like that, they've gone 41 times to the wrong fucking house. You gotta wonder, are you guys high?
Well, I mean, they have to know these SWAT officers by name when they hear their voices.
Bob, put down your gun. You know me.
Right, you were here yesterday.
We did this the other day. We're gonna be cool.
Yeah, but could you imagine being that family and try to sleep at night knowing that there's a high possibility that the police are going to kick in your door again?
No kidding. I mean, really, the whole issue with having this illegal because you're so scared of what can you do for the children? Fuck you. You raise your children. You teach them the right ways to do things. Teach them the truth about these substances. You don't have to worry about them abusing it. Unless you've done a shitty job as a parent raising them, then yes, they're going to take drugs. They're going to fuck up their lives because you didn't teach them any differently. That's your fault.
Well, and I agree. And I would say that there's a lot more youngsters in college abusing alcohol.
Absolutely. Because it's so much easier to get. Well, I don't know if it's easier. I've heard statistics go both ways.
I have too. But when a child turns 21, they're still in college usually. Unless they're a super genius.
Yeah.
And so, so for their junior and senior year of college, they are old enough. And they then hit the bar scene, and lots of kids don't finish school because of being at partying, and then they can't get up in the morning.
Well, I mean, even at like age 17, if I grew a mustache, I could walk into any liquor store and buy alcohol. Nobody bothered to cart me.
Yeah.
I just acted like I belonged, and I kind of looked like I was old enough.
Well, I've been old enough for a many number of years, and I still get carded if I want to buy a beer or something.
Well, that's a whole different argument right there, because people are being forced to show ID. I hate having to card somebody who's like obviously
clearly
in
50.
their 70s. I'm sorry, ma'am. Can I make you feel young and ask to see your ID? We're just being conditioned to make sure we carry our papers.
Well, exactly. Yeah, and but that part of the issue with the alcohol abuse and over consumption of that sort of thing. I was raised in a home that was rather puritanical. Alcohol was never permitted. It was highly looked down upon. And even now, as an adult who's much older than 21, I still feel guilty if I buy a beer. Like I feel like ashamed every time I go to a bar.
Wow,
and I've been old enough to go to a bar for well over a decade.
That's a huge difference, because when I was growing up, if you didn't have a beer in your hand, you were a pussy.
Yeah, and my family,
and I don't drink because of that for the most part. When I pick up alcohol, I start feeling like, oh shit, I turned out like the rest of them.
See, but either way, we have a negative attitude on it.
Yeah.
And that negative attitude has only perpetuated us feeling guilty. It hasn't actually changed the behavior.
Exactly. I still do it.
I still do, yeah. And I don't have a problem with alcohol. I can assure you of that. I drink a couple of times a year.
Yeah, exactly. That's
and I'm not even usually to excess. But even having one drink, I feel guilty the whole time I'm drinking it.
I'm kind of a big guy. I'm over 200 pounds. And it's funny as shit when people see me get my second margarita down and I'm like, I'm drunk!
That is a sight to behold, guys.
But by the time I get to the 6th or 7th drink, I'm really fucking drunk. But I'm still on my feet and having a good time.
Yeah.
It's the next morning that I fucking hate.
I don't even think I could drink 6 or 7 of them. I don't think so. But yeah, you get very sick in the morning, and that's a big difference between alcohol and cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, there is no hangover. There can be. I mean, I've been with groups where, you can't hang, see, you gotta have some more of this, blah, blah, blah. And you end up smoking way too much or eating way too much, and the next day you wake up with a pounding head.
Yeah.
Because you fucked up the body by not showing the proper reference to the substance.
Well, and that's the thing. If you, just like with any kind of food or other substance that you put into your body, you have to use things responsibly. If you know that you are smoking a substance or using an edible that is mind altering, you have to take care of your body.
Exactly.
You have to eat properly. You have to drink
You have
fluids
to
and
stay
water.
hydrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay hydrated. You have to rest. You can't be up all night partying and think that you can just get up and go to work the next day. Younger people can do it, but it's not good for you. So whatever kind of experimentation or having fun that you want to do, you still have to be responsible with your own body.
You do. And honestly, when I was younger, or even up to the age of 21, I didn't get hangovers when I drank heavily. I mean, it was no big deal. I never thought anything bad about, I can fucking drink whatever I want, whenever I want. I'll feel fine tomorrow. But not so much anymore. The older you get, holy cow.
I've always gotten sick if I drink, which is why I choose not to normally drink, because I've always gotten sick from it.
Yeah, I enjoy the effects when I'm actually drunk, but the after effects suck, and there is no reason to put yourself through that.
No, there's really not. Yeah, the benefit definitely does not outweigh the negativity caused by such a substance as alcohol, in my opinion, for my body.
I'll tell you, there's nothing quite as fun as going bowling when you're just shit-faced drunk. The times when you're looking down to pick up your ball off the rack, and when you look up, you've already thrown it. You're like, oh shit, how did that happen? No wonder I only bowled a 27 this game.
It's a good score. Beats my best score. Yeah, but I digress with the bowling.
It's a good game.
It is.
But no, I mean, as we're looking around, we're seeing more and more states are trying to push towards full legalization of cannabis, which I think is great, because there are a lot of people out there who greatly benefit from the medicinal medicinal services that it provides. There's a lot of cancer patients out there, and it helps. It helps with a lot of the issues if you're actually undergoing chemotherapy. Helps with a lot of issues for a variety of medical ailments. I can't even name them all, but if you go and do some research on Google, you can find them.
Yeah, I had a friend when I was in college whose brother was dying from pancreatic cancer. And he was about 25 at the time. And he lived in a state where medicinal marijuana was not available. So his brother had to find a way to get him the substance and to sneak it to him so that he could be able to eat. Because the chemotherapy and the radiation was so traumatic on his body that he hadn't been able to eat for weeks. And his brother had to sneak the substance to him in a state that it wasn't allowed. And then, he had to go and hide in his basement as a sick person that could barely make it down the stairs because he was so afraid that the neighbors upstairs would alert the police and he would get in trouble and get arrested for just trying to be able to eat.
How sad is that?
And then he was terminal. It wasn't like he was going to get better, but he wanted to at least be able to enjoy the life and have enough time to get his affairs in order for his demise.
Yeah, I want to live in relative peace and comfort up until this last few weeks are over.
Exactly, because he only had about 2 months to live, and he was. And how sad that you would have to spend those 2 months afraid of being arrested. You can't even eat because you have to. The substance was required for him to be able to have a calm enough stomach to be able to eat and to have hunger, and he spent the last 2 months afraid to go to prison.
That whole paranoia thing is one of the reasons I had to quit. You can't enjoy the effects of it if the whole time you're thinking, somebody's going to kick down the door. Holy shit, I'm going to go to jail. Oh,
yeah.
God.
What's that sound?
Who made that noise?
Yeah. But that's the tragedy of being an American, is that I know people who would have been greatly benefited from the use of medical marijuana, except that they were not permitted to, and they were too afraid to still utilize it because they were afraid of going to prison before they died.
Well, think about all the people who are just whacked out of their minds with stress and self-destructive behavior, and they never really find a way to get around it. And trust me, these prescribed medications are not helping people for the most part.
Agreed.
Because most of them are misdiagnosed and given a bunch of shit they shouldn't be taking in the first place that cause suicidal thoughts.
Right.
Whereas if you taught them proper meditation and then gave them cannabis, either pill form, edible, through a vaporizer, whatever the case may be, even smoking it out of a pipe, whatever, they could possibly reach some kind of personal reflection and realize what is causing them to behave in their own destructive ways and move past it. Right. Become a different person. You could cure the whole world with this plant, damn it.
Right. Well, and my area of specialty is I've worked in the mental health field for well over a decade. I have worked in the probation department. I have worked in hospitals. I've worked in psychiatric hospitals, all these different kinds of community centers. And a lot of people actually were helped more by using marijuana than they were hurt by it. Though, if they were found to be using it, they would lose their housing. They would lose any benefits that they have. They would not be allowed to continue coming for mental health groups. So then if they made the, quote, mistake of smoking with someone else, because they never had any money for their own.
Yeah.
But if somebody, would happen to have a little something and share it with them, then they potentially would have lost everything that they had, which wasn't very much to begin with. Except that they were so paranoid and anxious without it that it was actually more harmful for them to not have it than they would have actually benefited from being allowed to use it.
There are so many arguments back and forth on it, and really, when people are arguing against it, it's all based on the propaganda that was started in the turn of the 20th century. Even up through the hippie era, where people were afraid that everybody's going to turn into a pansy and want to love one another, and they won't want to go to war.
Right.
Well, look around you. We shouldn't be going to war anyway. We're obviously not smart enough to pull it off in any meaningful means.
Yeah, well, our country is not the first country to overreact when trying to control its citizens regarding substance use. When we said before that alcohol and tobacco were the top 2 drugs of choice in the United States, ancient China, they had a tobacco use problem, and they decreed that anyone found to be using tobacco would have their nostrils slit to identify them as a smoker. And yeah,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I watched a giant documentary about it once as part of my mental health training.
Nice.
Yeah, in college, and I watched it probably 500 times because I was so fascinated by this information. But yeah, their nostrils were slit to identify them as a smoker, so they deemed smoking tobacco far more serious, to the point where they would actually mutilate the face to make other people aware that these people were smokers. And and we would see that and go, "What the hell is that?"
Well, we got to be careful, because some people will look at it and go, "What the hell is that?" Well, I got to go talk to my tattoo artist and see if he'll do it for me.
Oh yeah, but actually, as a punishment though, is crazy, because you were found to be smoking tobacco, you'd have your nostrils slit, and that wasn't the only the only means of mutilating, but that's one of the ones I found most disturbing. But that was tobacco use, and they deemed tobacco so evil they would do that to another human being's face. And our country deems marijuana so evil that we would incarcerate someone for 20 years or more because they happen to have some in their possession.
Well, it cracks me up. I mean, all of those laws are getting pretty damn ridiculous. And there's a point in time when you just have to throw your hands up in the air, even as a lawmaker, and say, all right, look, we made some mistakes. We're going to fix them now. Anybody who's in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, we're going to go ahead and let you go. Here's a small check to make up for your time, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You don't even have to do that, because it was technically illegal at the time of their incarceration, but just let these people out and stop spending so much fucking money on this shit. We figured out this morning, like, we were, the federal and state level combined is right now at $14.2 billion spent for this year alone, only 5 months into the year, on drug enforcement.
Yeah.
$14 billion.
And this is the beginning of the 5th month, not even the end.
Yeah, we're not even 2 weeks into the 5th month yet. And we're bitching about budget crisis and how the government might have to shut down because they can't afford to pay things. This is a fucking ridiculous bill that we spend every year. It breaks down to like $500 per second that we're spending.
Isn't that insane?
Can you imagine anything that you would spend $500 a second to experience?
Well, and think about some of the just flat out silliness, aside from incarcerating everyone, which is bad enough. But I remember being a young person in school, and I'm talking like elementary school, and they would do the anti-drug week, the DARE program. And so they would hand out these... Yeah, look at me, I'm proud to be drug-free. And inevitably, all the children in the class, and I'm talking like in 3rd grade, were changing it to drugs for free.
Yeah,
I'm proud to be drugs for free.
Proud to be a druggie.
Oh, you changed it to druggie? That's funny. But yeah, I'm talking about like 8-year-olds who understood how ridiculous this was. And they would sometimes hand out T-shirts and different things. But how silly is it to even spend money on some little red ribbons?
But do you remember what it was like learning about those substances?
Oh, I was terrified. I was like, my God. I was terrified of these things called drugs.
They started off teaching us about cocaine and how horrible it was, and how, you know, even a single tiny use for the first time could drop you into like an 8-hour coma full of the most horrific nightmares you've ever experienced.
And then you'd never be able to stop.
And you'd never wake up. And then if you did wake up, you'd never be able to stop taking this drug that would just destroy you mentally.
Yeah.
And cannabis is worse.
I remember that too.
And then, like, when you're a teenager and you're like, okay, I don't know if I want to believe everything they say, and this guy's offering me a puff. You take a few puffs and you're like, fuck, this is amazing.
Right. I didn't even die.
That's your gateway drug right there, because people are like, well, fuck, they lied about this. I guess I'll try all the other ones.
Yeah. And that, believe it or not, is a big part of it, because I know I was told as a youngster in school how the evils of all of these things, and I was terrified of anything to have to do with any of that. And so I was actually an adult the first time that I ever partook, because I was scared. And then the first time, yeah, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try it. And then I was all freaked out for the whole evening, because I was so paranoid and thinking about, okay, now that I know I've done this, I've partaken of this cannabis, now I know I'm going to have some kind of addiction problem. So now I'm going to have to go and get treatment. And it's like, what the hell are you thinking? Then I came down, I'm like, okay, I was fine. Obviously, I was just high.
Yeah.
Talking like that.
All right, things are better now.
Yeah, and it was like, just a couple hours went by, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm fine.
We'll go on.
Huh, interesting. I don't even have a big desire to go get any more, and I didn't even rob anyone to get any.
What scares me the most about drugs, though, I saw, like, when my oldest niece, she's almost 17 now, but when she was in elementary school and she got all the pamphlets and stuff on drugs and all this, my sister showed them to me. They showed you damn near every piece of equipment that would be used for smoking cannabis, and who to call if you saw it in your house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gestapo.
Here, kids, turn in your parents.
Yeah, Gestapo said what?
We'll give you candy. Don't worry about the whole welfare system and being an orphan. We'll take care of it.
Exactly. But yeah, I remember being in high school, and I took a substance abuse class, and it was apparently supposed to teach you how to not abuse substances, but I learned how to cut cocaine and make it pure cocaine again instead of what it was cut with, because they cut it with different substances. So I now know how to separate pure cocaine from what it was cut with.
School's education
program. And I can tell you the teacher that taught me that.
Thank you, Officer Friendly.
Yeah, Officer Friendly taught me how to separate pure cocaine from what it was cut with. I also know that there are other substances found in my home that I could smoke to get high that I had no idea about, and I would have not known if it wasn't for that teacher telling me.
How crazy is that?
Isn't it?
They teach you how to use this stuff to alter your mind.
Yeah.
And then tell you where to turn yourself in.
Exactly. Yeah, that's crazy.
One of the funniest things I heard, there's a video on YouTube, I believe, you can probably look it up. It's a cop who calls 911 because he and his wife had smoked a bunch of pot. And you can tell by his speech, obviously the guy is high as a kite. But he thinks they've been poisoned because he's never experienced it before. And he's turning himself in and having the cops sent to his house because he's terrified that they're going to die.
Yeah.
Just because he's been fed that fucking propaganda for so long.
Yeah.
The whole thing is really ridiculous when you look at it.
Well, it logically doesn't make sense.
No.
So we're going to spend, because I've been watching these totals add up because we've got this feed coming in.
Yeah, if you go to drugsense.org, just look up their drug war clock. And you will see this thing just ringing up second by second.
Yeah, I can't look away. Numbers. I keep staring at it.
I know. It's like fascinating. It's like a train wreck.
But yeah, I'm watching this amount continue to add up for how much they're spending on the war on drugs. And there is, we can't afford to feed people in this country. But we can afford $14 billion, more than $14 billion in 5 months. On trying to fight drugs.
What we argued about most during the last budget crisis the government was having is whether or not we could support Big Bird.
Yeah.
But we just spent $14 billion to stop you from smoking pot.
Right.
Because the children might be in danger.
Well, and are there other drugs out there? Yeah.
Of course there are.
Are there drugs out there that I would prefer people not to use? Hell yeah. I would prefer that, but I don't have the right to tell other people what they can and can't do.
Exactly. Take a good long look in the mirror and ask yourself, who the fuck am I to tell anybody what to do?
Right, well, and
I've made mistakes.
Exactly.
I understand this.
Exactly, and referring back to the former presidents that admitted having partaken of marijuana, they apparently turned out reasonably fine. We let them run the country.
Well, I wouldn't say reasonably fine. They tend to fuck up the job.
Agreed. But the point of that is that they managed to go from their lowly drug-abusing ways of being scumbags, allegedly, to rising all the way up the ranks of becoming actually president of the United States. And so in what way did it impact them negatively? None.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at music, most art, most comedy, the people producing these things are on something.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, yeah.
You've got to alter your mind in order to reach a certain state of creativity, and these people do it, and it turns out fine, and we celebrate them, and we pay them, and they become millionaires, and we're okay with that. But if that guy next door decided to try it, we're going to have to put him in a cage.
Yeah, well, and that, and you have to be in a cage, and then you have to go and pay all these weird fees. And because I worked in the probation department, it was the craziest thing to me. I was forced by my employer to collect fees from people who had been released from incarceration because they smoked weed. So then they had to come to court, and they had to come to probation every week. They had to pay $35 a week to be on probation. Then some of them still had to pay extra money every day to be on house arrest because you couldn't trust them to be out and about because they smoked weed. But
afraid they're going to go get it, like they can't just call and have someone deliver it to them.
Right, but so I've got these people paying these fees all the time, and there's no way they can afford them because they're not allowed to be outside at certain hours of the night because they are convicted of marijuana, so they can't be outside depending on their particular curfew violation issues. And so how are they supposed to be able to pay these damn fees? They can't pay them, so guess what? They have to go back to prison because they couldn't pay their fees. But I had a probationer that was convicted of murder that went across state lines every day to go to school, that worked at a job, and he was a killer. He killed somebody on purpose for no reason. Literally no reason. This person killed another person. But the kid that was right, but the kid that smoked weed can't leave his house because he's on house arrest. It's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, the whole cannabis argument drives me nuts. But the other one that really gets me is the fact that we still prohibit people from being able to grow industrial hemp.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, industrial hemp is a cousin of cannabis that has zero, pharmacological effect on the mind.
Right.
You cannot get high. You can smoke 50 pounds of it in a 15-minute period. You might get a buzz from smoke inhalation.
Right,
That's about it. But it's great. I mean, you can make fuel out of it. You can make biodegradable plastics. You can make cloth. You can make paper.
Right.
The seeds are one of the most nutritional things you can take into your body. And we can import products made from it from other states, or from other countries, but we are not permitted to grow it here because it looks too much like cannabis.
Correct.
And it's been shown. I mean, if you were to go, say, like different river areas in Kentucky, there are a lot of people who will grow weed along the banks because obviously it's getting irrigated and it's going to get some sunlight because there's a break in the trees there. If you just took a helicopter across that area and sprinkled industrial hemp seeds, the hemp would take off faster and kill all of the weed that people are smoking.
That's crazy.
And then there would be no more psychoactive weed available. And we could become completely energy independent with this stuff. Mm-hmm. But we're not doing it because we're afraid. What about the children? Well, the children shouldn't be making paper in the first place.
Exactly. They have no business working in those paper mills. We created laws to prevent that. But exactly, yeah, that actually reminded me of last week, or was it the week before now, where they were in Watertown looking for that bombing suspect. And they were doing house-by-house raids and had the helicopters flying overhead with the heat sensors.
2 weeks now.
It was, gosh, has it been that long?
It has.
Wow. But yeah, I remember when the helicopters were flying over the entire town with the heat sensors looking for him, and they found him in that boat. I thought, my God, all the grow houses are going to get busted. I was like, they're going to know. Everybody turn off your lights. They're going to know.
Does Massachusetts have any kind of legalization laws?
I have no idea, but it made me chuckle inside because my first thought was, because if watching like TV shows like Cops, I'm like, they're going to know that there's drugs being grown in those homes.
They probably just got two people, one in there looking for the bombing suspect and one running off a checklist of people's addresses. We're going to go and bust these fuckers and these fuckers and those fuckers.
Yeah, but yeah, that was the first thing I thought when I saw those helicopters, like, oh no. Because we have them, we live in an area that's got rural communities nearby, and so there's a lot of farms. And we always have helicopters flying overhead, looking for drugs being grown in people's farms.
Well, I remember being told as a kid, I mean, whenever I'd go down and visit grandparents in Kentucky, we'd see the helicopters flying over fields all the time. Yeah. And they had to tell us it was because they're trying to spot people growing drugs.
Right.
I found out that people were growing, basically putting together a giant checkerboard in their field with strawberries. It'd be like a big square of strawberries, a big square of pot, a big square... and because the leaves are kind of similar when you're up in the air.
Right.
It helped hide things.
Interesting. Yeah, I was unaware of the
Don't take my advice, and I'm not taking any credit for you getting busted growing strawberries and weed in your yard.
Yeah, but I had no idea.
You're on your own, buddy.
That's funny. Yeah, so, don't grow it because it's illegal still.
It totally is.
Unless you have a medical card and you live in one of those states where you can do that, then do what you do.
But how ridiculous is that? Colorado voted to completely legalize it. That means the majority of voters in their state said, yes, we want this legal.
Correct.
And the federal government says, no, we will still prosecute.
Right.
Aren't you basically saying the will of the people does not matter?
Yeah, I wonder at what point that what the actual public wants will be taken into account regarding anything, really.
Yeah,
like with the
exactly.
with the genetically modified food. Everybody I know is like, I don't want that.
Yeah,
well, then why the hell are they allowing it?
Everybody who seems to be highly informed on the subject is saying, fuck no, I don't want that. I would rather grow vegetables in my home.
Right.
Oh, wait, no, the SWAT team's going to kick down the door if I do that.
Right, yeah, God help you if you're trying to grow some turnips or something in your basement, because they will kick in your door and come and get you without even bothering to ask you, what are you growing in your basement?
Don't get me wrong. I think there's a great use for police in our society.
Oh, God, yes.
And I don't besmirch the police in the least bit. I'm not a cop hater like
No.
most.
And who do I call when I need help? The
Exactly.
cops.
I'm calling the fucking cops. Somebody's
Exactly.
got to come and save my ass.
Exactly. So I have utmost respect for the law enforcement community.
They serve a vital function in our society. I mean, we have a lot of crazy assholes that we need someone to put down once in a while.
Right.
And an armed person is very helpful with that. They shouldn't have to put themselves in risk.
For something like this.
Yeah, drug deals. How many people right now are on the edge of their seats waiting for the revolution to begin, and they're just oiling their guns and smiling in the mirror and staring at pictures of politicians they don't like? If the cops kick down their door, boom, there's a fucking war started. The police don't need to put themselves in that kind of danger, especially over a false positive test. Or, just, the electric company says you're using the proper amount of wattage to use grow lights.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kick in your door and go, get a warrant, dude. I don't give a fuck what your chief is telling you. Get a warrant and knock on the door.
Well, because here's the thing. If someone actually is growing drugs in their home, they're not going to be gone the next day. There's no way to go from seed to full plant in 24 hours. So if you take the time to get a warrant and actually establish your evidence, and it takes you a day or two, whatever was going on is still going to be going on. Unless, as law enforcement, you did something to tip them off that you were trying to find them.
Right.
So just stay back, gather all your evidence, just like when you go to court for something. You don't just haul off and take someone to court 5 minutes after picking them up. Yeah. You have to wait, get all your evidence together.
Well, I mean, like for me, I've got plants growing in my house. I've got
vegetable plants.
I was going to finish explaining that. I mean, I've got like broccoli and asparagus and all kinds of shit growing in a big planting area in front of my big window.
Mm-hmm.
And if the police came knocking on my door because they suspected I was growing drugs, I would take them and their dogs in and show them around.
Right, because you're not doing anything.
Yeah, and anybody who's being legal, they're probably willing to do that just to get you to go away without breaking shit.
Right.
I mean, I don't want you kicking down my fucking door because you think something bad's going on.
Right.
That's a problem. We need to get rid of these laws and just give the police free rein, because even though I believe they serve a vital function in society, I believe there are also a lot of sociopathic assholes who join the police department because they like cracking skulls, and they think their costume gives them the right to do so.
Well, I don't have an example with that with law enforcement, but I remember when I was in college, 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And several of my classmates enlisted because they were going to go and save the American dream of democracy,
fight for freedom.
Right, across the world. And I actually heard 3 different gentlemen say, I can't wait to get over there and rape their women and fuck their babies, because that's what we're there for. And these are not people you want to have in your military. These are not soldier material. These are people that need to be incarcerated. That is not normal to even think something like that, let alone say it.
We glorify that kind of thing in our media so badly, though. That's what we're producing.
Yeah.
And then when you go to basic training, you're taught to be a killing machine. And you've got some guy who taught you how to move a little bit and how to fight in the best way that they've figured out to teach 30 or 40 people at a time.
Right.
And when you're done, he's like, you're an unstoppable killing machine. Go forth and do what I tell you.
Yeah, but just that attitude of the false machismo to the nth degree is just crazy to me. But there are some law enforcement officers that do have similar, I'm not saying about raping women and babies, but they do have that very, very macho, I'm going to prove how strong I am to you.
Yeah,
attitude.
I've got to show my dominance.
Right.
But I mean, there are plenty of them out there who got involved because they wanted to help people,
Yeah.
because they wanted to make a difference in their community, because they wanted to make the world a better place.
Right, absolutely.
I have all the respect in the world for a person that does that.
I do too.
But you need to be able to go to your boss and say, all right, this one over here is a crazy fuck that's going to kill somebody, and
Right.
you gave him a gun.
Right.
Take it away and send him home.
Right. Well, but like referencing back to the conversation a couple seconds ago, well, a few minutes by now, of putting law enforcement officers in danger, I had been flipping through cable channels the other day and caught a TV show. It's about like people who grow marijuana like up in the wilderness. I don't know what it's called because I've never seen it before, but apparently it's a series that plays all the time, and there's different episodes.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And yeah, I don't know either because I just happened to catch a few minutes of it. But so these people are living up in like the wilderness and they grow marijuana, and so the show I think is actually about the police, and they go and they try to find all the places where they're doing this, and they have to have all these SWAT guys with all this gear and everything, and they have to be very secretive and sneaky because they're afraid they'll be shot to death by these people growing. And absolutely they could be. So why would you take officers and put 30 of them in danger to stop someone from growing marijuana when it's, I mean, my God, you're killing them for nothing. Yeah, so we're checking the numbers back now on how much money's being spent on drug wars.
We're still at $14.2 billion.
Yeah, but it goes like, I'm sitting here, it's going up by $1,000 very quickly. Now we're up to, it
goes up by $1,000 every 2 seconds.
Yeah, every time I blink, it's up $4,000.
But I feel bad for the police that have to put themselves in that position.
Absolutely.
If we went and just said full legalization, the best thing to do, if we legalize it, is just to educate people on the proper use of these things. Educate people on the dangers of the ones that are actually going to harm you. Then all of a sudden, instead of spending $14 billion every 5 months on enforcing these laws, just to throw people in a private for-profit prison system,
right?
You can keep the police more safe by not sending them after these people.
Right.
Treat the people who have problems.
Right.
Make it a medical issue, because that's really what it is. It's a medical and a mental health issue.
Correct.
That you're dealing with. It's not a societal issue. It's not a legal issue. That's a misnomer that we need to get rid of. We can turn this into a huge boon. I've heard people talk about like being able to move to the states that have made it legal to grow so many plants in your house, and turning it into a multi-million-dollar-a-year business that's perfectly legal.
Right.
The tax revenue on that. I mean, if you've got 50 people in a city that are able to do this just to sell to the general public. I mean,
through dispensaries.
Yeah, through dispensaries, not in an illegal trade, in a legalized world. You're making a huge boon in your tax revenues as opposed to something that you're spending on a regular basis.
Correct. Well, then all of those people who are farmers are then generating income that will be taxed, and then the dispensaries are then employing people who are earning income that will be taxed, and then the business itself has to pay income tax, and then it perpetuates more jobs.
It
and
does.
So a country that is, we're starving for employment right now, and there are countless jobs that could be created for something like this.
Yeah, we're sending our young people out to kill and die and become maimed and mutilated over energy sources, basically. And we could create our own right here in this country if we chose. Legalization of hemp is the only thing we need to do, and we could be on top of the world again in no time. And doing it in a positive way rather than by militant force.
Right. Rather than by blood. It would be by hemp.
And how nice would it be, that guy that I mentioned earlier, the ones that are sitting around oiling their guns, staring at pictures of politicians they think they should hate, and just ready to start that big civil war?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just let them get high and chill the fuck out?
Right. Here, go ahead and get high, braid yourself a rope out of this good quality hemp, and then go and jump rope or do whatever you need to do. We're going to make you a loom so you can weave, and then you can sit there and smoke all day and weave yourself a little outfit. And they will have plenty of busy time with their hands. They won't have any more time to plot weird, crazy stuff against the government. It just makes me laugh because I know exactly who you're talking about.
Well, I mean, if you go on YouTube and type in American Revolution, you don't even see shit about history anymore.
I know.
You see like a billion different things about the guys that are ready to go right now. If they keep stepping on my rats, I'm going to shoot some motherfuckers in the street. Woo!
Out of my cold, dead hands.
I'm telling you, if there is going to be a revolution of any sort, it needs to be one of mental awakening.
Yes.
Spiritual awakening.
Yeah, because just interpersonal development.
Exactly. Becoming a little more intelligent, learning how to use your intelligence. Those people that are ready to go out and start shooting up the streets and they think you're going to have a head-to-head war against the government, that's just going to cause total destruction and chaos. It's not going to end up in any positive way, because once it's over, no matter who wins, the winning side is going to start fighting amongst themselves to see who gets to be in charge now. Yeah. And it's going to go on forever. It would be much better to have to go with only limited internet use for a little while we rebuild our society.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People are terrified about losing electricity for a few days or weeks, or not having adequate internet use so they can play their games, their online games.
I might have to use a different energy source, and my car won't go 50 miles an hour over the speed limit for a few years.
Right. But yeah, I would be all for creating a society where it's actually sustainable, where maybe even more beneficial than sustainable. Like the Norwegian societies where they say we're building for 700 generations in the future. We want to make sure that what we have now is not only enough for us, but for 700 generations of children in the future. Will they have what they need based on what we're doing now?
That's a great argument against that statement I made a couple weeks ago to you, where I said, we're coming to a crossroads in humanity where we have to decide, are we going to change what we're doing now and fix all of our problems now?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to decide that we're a species here for destruction and just burn this motherfucker to the ground? And in that case, we don't need laws anyway, because if we're just here to destroy the planet, let's fuck it up right now.
And be done with it.
Yeah, be done. There's no need to stick around for another 100 or 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope that we're here to fix this thing. I hope we have enough intelligence left in the species to really put it back together and get a grip on things, start thinking rationally, have decent conversations about what needs to go on, and really, that's what I want this show to be about.
Yeah.
Fixing what the hell is wrong with us.
Yeah, get some different ideas out there, get some opinions from the listeners, and what do you see that can be done differently? Something that would actually be beneficial to the world community, not just our local community.
Absolutely.
But, if we don't have pollution,
yeah.
But if you fix your own town, then yeah, your town's great. But guess what? The air that flows over your town is the same air that flows over the other towns.
That's right.
And the water sources are the same. And so if we don't work on a more global approach, it's never going to change. You have to, and of course you have to start locally. How am I going to get to Tibet to work on anything?
Exactly.
So yeah, I have to, of course, but I have to also be in my mind think globally. What I'm doing actually does impact what happens to other people. A tiny example of that is in my backyard, my very, very backyard, my grass grows 1,000 times faster than the grass anywhere else because my neighbors fertilize his lawn. My lawn, I don't use any fertilizer on whatsoever because I'd rather be able to live. I'd rather be able to have adequate. Yeah, exactly. I want to have decent water and decent soil for growing things. And one day, this man actually had the audacity to come over and be like, "Aren't you glad that I fertilize over here so that this grass looks really full?" And I'm looking at my sparse, pitiful grass in the rest of the yard. I'm like, I don't know what the hell, asshole, you think is going on here, but I want it that way, where I very rarely have to mow because I'd like to keep my carbon footprint as small as possible.
I don't live on the set to Leave It to Beaver, asshole.
Exactly.
I didn't buy into this whole I need grass to make my yard look right.
Exactly, but yeah, he's an older gentleman. He's in his 70s, and he wanted to come over and have me congratulate him and give him props for poisoning my yard. I'm like, now I can't grow food here. Thank you.
You gotta point out, hey, if I were to call the office of the state chemist, you would be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for putting your chemicals on my property.
Yeah, well, and
you might want to fix that shit.
Exactly, yeah, and to make matters worse, he put an illegal drain from his yard into mine so that his excess rainwater would come into mine. So then everything that was in his yard was washing into mine.
You got to build some kind of cistern that picks it all up, and then a pump system so it just fires it back in his house.
Yeah, I should.
Peel the paint off.
But yeah, so his priority was having his lawn look nice, which is great for him, except that my priority is being able to stay alive longer.
Yeah.
So I would but now I literally cannot grow food in that part of my yard or anywhere else in my yard because his chemicals are in my yard, and I don't feel comfortable eating that.
Well, and until most people wake up and start realizing what these chemicals are doing to their property, their environment, the food, everything, you kind of need to grow food indoors.
Right.
And you kind of need to be able to do that without worrying about a SWAT team kicking your door open while you're asleep in the middle of the night.
Right. Yeah, God forbid you be a family that's growing whatever vegetables, melons and such in your living room or your basement or your garage or wherever you have it. And yeah, God forbid you're just sitting there making dinner one night or you're sound asleep because it's 2 a.m. because that's usually how they do it. And yeah, they just kick in your door and throw you all around and handcuff you without even asking what your name is.
Your kids are having nightmares for the rest of their teenage years of thinking of that time when Daddy had a gun to his head.
Right. Right.
Because he grew a tomato.
Yeah, but that happened to that family last year, and they had their home raided, and the father was held at gunpoint for 2.5 hours while they're insisting it must be the 13-year-old child that's growing marijuana in the house. And what they found was 6 plants, 3 tomato plants, and 1 melon plant, and 2 squash plants. So there were 6 plants growing in total.
6.
Yeah,
Good job.
there was. Yeah, I can do math.
Cannabis use didn't hurt you too
Not
much.
at all. But yeah, so they were growing 6 food plants, and then they had the nerve to kill their plants. The food source they were trying to grow.
That picture was awesome. I would have sued him for the produce value.
Be like, well, and that's what
You
they
owe
do.
me $17.50, motherfucker.
But that's what they do with marijuana and whatnot. When they bust someone that's growing cannabis, they weigh the whole plant, which is not the fruit of quote fruit of the plant. So they have these big balls of dirt attached to the bottom. They weigh the whole thing, so you've got 50 billion pounds of this when it really wasn't anywhere near that number. But yeah, if you need to recoup your losses of them destroying your turnip plants, they're not going to give you anything.
No, not at all.
That's crazy.
But like you were saying a few minutes ago, we do need to figure out how to fix this place. We need to figure out how to make this world a better place to live in.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get people to stop being dicks to each other. I mean,
Well,
that's first and foremost. And I think this is a good way to get a conversation started about it.
Right, because you listen to us talk, and then you can talk to us or amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to start posting these on YouTube. Feel free to leave comments what you think we should talk about. We'll research the shit out of it and give you our honest opinions.
Yeah, and
we can rave about that.
Ravings with Tana and Bill. Sexy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that's our plan. So if there's anything going on that you know about that we don't, for God's sakes, let us know. How are we going to get the word out otherwise?
Oh, by all means, especially if you pick up on something happening in the news right now. If it's a breaking story, let us know. We might record an extra show. I mean, we're going to try and do one a week, but if we have to do 2 or 3, that's not a problem.
Yeah, our time is your time, so let us know what's happening.
All right, folks. Well, I think that's about it for this week. The first week. This is episode 1, or at least it might be, depending on what else we release.
Yeah.
Ha-ha!
Ha-ha! So yeah, this is Tana and Bill signing off with No Peg, Wrong Hole Productions and the show Ravings.